The Commanders have a deal with the district. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the Commanders and the district agreeing to a deal that would allow the Commanders to build a stadium at the site of RFK. So before I get into all the details, just one quick little programming note. Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders, and I will be back on Monday night to do a live stream show. Wasn't necessarily planning on it, but we want to talk about the return to RFK and we can talk about the draft. So join us there, 7:30 Eastern time. Look for a link on the page. There you go. Well, again, we'll be talking a lot about the return to RFK, just from a logistical standpoint, from the detail standpoint, but also from an emotional standpoint. Bram, of course, grew up as a Redskins fan, and what it means to go back there, assuming that the next steps are all satisfied. So here's what we know right now. And I'm recording this Sunday night. There will be a press conference to announce the agreement on Monday morning in the district. So if you're hearing this after 11 a.m., you probably already saw the press conference. If you're hearing me before, well, that's what's going to happen today. Josh Harris and Mayor Muriel Bowser will announce the agreement and the details of the agreement at this joint press conference. And there will be some news coming out before then. So there you go. That's the first thing. Don't yet know the terms of the deal. And this is going to be important because there's still some steps to satisfy here. It is expected to be north of $3 billion. That's what multiple reports had earlier this month. So that's what the expectation is. We'll get the final details in the official terms in the morning. The DC Council must still approve the use of public funding for any stadium. Now, the Washington Post reported a couple weeks ago that the team would pay for the stadium. So then, but DC would be on the hook for a lot of other things because it's not just going to be a stadium that's being built at this site. But anyways, we'll find out those details. So I don't want to sit here and say what it might be. We'll find out what it is for sure and look for that on ESPN.com, of course, later in the day. But again, the DC Council must approve any use of public funds for this. Phil Mendelson, who is the DC Council chair, told the Post earlier this month that he didn't want any public money going from the public treasury, from the DC Treasury to go for stadiums. So we'll see what happens there. They've been split on that in the past. We'll see what happens. But that is another step in this. But this is, of course, a pretty huge step. The expectation is there would be obviously the stadium. It's 174 acres. The stadium there, some public housing, some retail shops, parking facilities. At one point, Mayor Bowser had told others that she would like to have a recreational center, a rec center there as well. So, we'll get the final detailed plans Monday morning because all that stuff is secondary to the big news, which is that they would have agreed to build the stadium there. And, so anyways, long road to get to this point, of course. Bowser told me in December that this process accelerated really once there was an ownership change. Big shocker there, right? Dan Snyder was not going to ever get this done in the district. So it just wasn't. And I'm not sure where he would have gotten it done because nobody really wanted to deal with him anymore. Maryland was in this until the Senate passed the continuing resolution bill, or put it in there, the provision that the government would transfer the land to, because it's federal land. When they transfer the land to the district, which extended the lease on that land by 99 years, that really solidified the chances for for the Commanders to get the deal done with the city. After that point, I talked to somebody with the team, someone with the organization, who just said that there's basically now a 75% chance that they're going to be down there. This was back in December when that got passed, as you recall. So that's where we're at. That Virginia really wasn't in the running for a long time, so they were kind of out of it. Of course, Maryland again was in it until that point, and after that point, it wasn't even a couple weeks ago when you got the news reports coming out. It was like people would say, "Well, it's not a done deal." Well, no, but everything clearly was headed this way, and so that's where we're at. This is where they belong. Maryland to be honest, going to FedEx Northwest Stadium, it's been kind of a pain for a lot of people unless you live by the stadium. Virginia, I think you would have had basically the same situation in reverse for people who live in Maryland or even for anywhere, right? DC is where they belong. They belong back in the city, and this is, I think, is just another step in the transformation of this organization. And by the way, if they get back there, this is secondary to the Commanders being there. But for Bowser, this gives her a chance, for the city a chance to bid on a Super Bowl, to get possibly a Final Four, to get more major concerts. So they're trying to really maximize not just having it be, the Commanders play there for 10 dates out of the year, maximize the value of the facility and the property. So, anyways, just wanted to point that out. But again, getting back to the emotional tug of it for you guys, this is where they belong, right? Josh Harris grew up one of you as a Redskins fan, going to games at RFK. He brought that up. That was one of the first things he talked about when he bought the team in July 2023 at the press conference in Minnesota. We heard a lot about him going to games at RFK, what it meant to him, his feelings as a Redskins fan. And that stuff hasn't subsided. So from that time on, you kind of knew, like, this is where we always knew it's where they wanted to be. The question was always, could they get it done? Again, DC Council still has to prove the funding of this, so the public funding of it, or the use of public funds, I should say. So, but this is what Harris wanted. This is what the organization wanted. This is what Bowser wanted. Both sides have been deeply motivated to get it done. That's why Josh Harris, Roger Goodell, others in the organization were lobbying, were lobbying Congress to get this included in that provision in the bill. And they completed a Hail Mary on the morning of December 21st, because it was the second one for the team that season, because that's what got it in. Without that provision, we're not sitting here talking about this. But when you're putting that kind of effort into it, of course, you were looking for one resolution, and it's this one. So that's what we got going on now. But this is the emotional aspect. Look at how much this organization has been transformed in just 2 years. Think about 2 years ago at this time, what we're talking about. The sale of the team. We didn't know who was going to buy the team now, even though it looked like it was, at this point, it was clearly Josh Harris who's emerging as the strong front runner, but nothing new yet. I mean, go back 2.5 years ago, and Dan Snyder was just announcing the team was up for sale, and people still were afraid he wouldn't really sell. You had all sorts of negative issues surrounding the franchise. From Congress to the stench of losing for so many years, and just very little hope for the future of this organization. Now look at it. You have a new owner, you have a GM who's really good, a coach who's really good, and a quarterback who could become the face of the league for a long time. So, and now you have an agreement in place to go back to the RFK site, which is basically Mecca for Redskins fans, Washington fans, Commanders fans, whatever you want to call it. This is where I'm assuming most of you guys would want to be. And it wouldn't shock me if they do kind of tip their cap to old RFK, which is still there, needs to be demolished, but tip their cap to that by maybe having some stands that bounce up and down. Wouldn't that be cool? So it wouldn't shock me at all if they did something like that. So, and I know there's other things you guys would like, but man, this team, this owner, this group has really restored a lot of positive feelings for this franchise, a lot of good karma coming back. And I think it's culminating in this deal. Again, DC Council must approve the use of public funds. But I just want to say that just because the deal is agreed upon, there's still another step with this. But anyways, looks very good. And this is a really big step. And that's why I wanted to do a podcast. I was not planning to do this, but I think this is quite a seismic piece of news. So, and I'm hoping that you guys are excited. Listen, I covered games at RFK. I covered games from 94 for the last 3 years that they were at the stadium, and it was fun. I mean, I would say the press box was a dump because it was an old baseball press box. You're basically sitting there. You could not have all the equipment you have now and survive in that press box. It was that tiny, or you wouldn't be able to have as many people in there. The first time I went there, I went to the auxiliary press box, was up in the the very top of the stadium. And that's where I met Rick Snyder. And we had green hot dogs and warm Cokes for a preseason game. It was abysmal. But being the press box, it was tight squeeze, and it was open. It was cold. It was terrible. but the atmosphere at the stadium was always great. The fans were terrific. It was a great, intimate atmosphere. It was 53,000 people, and it was fun because you had the excitement, the energy. Now I started covering the team after the Super Bowl, but you still had the energy of the fan base, um, because of all the success that existed before that point. And certainly it was not, it was still there. The feel of the Super Bowl success was still there. The hope for the franchise was still there. So you still had the energy at the stadium, but it was fun to go to big games there and just to feel the crowd and to see the bouncing up and down and everything, and know like this is where Darryl Green broke up the pass, and there you can picture the seat cushions flying down. But now they're going back there, and I think this is another positive step for this. Now they've got the deal in place, but now this is another positive step for the organization. So Bram and I will be back Monday night, 7:30 Eastern time, to talk about the return to RFK as well as the draft. Please join us there. Bring your enthusiasm. We'll talk to you then.